So good morning. Good morning, everyone. Are you seeing me?
You are invited.
See you, but you're
I am invited.
Yes.
Is it okay? Are you able to see me?
Yes, we can see you, Chairperson.
Okay. So good morning and welcome to the 2021 National Humanities Conference hosted by the College of Humanities and Social Sciences. We're in our third day. We had a keynote on the first day where Professor Paul Zereza Tiyambe told us that the humanities are alive and well. And we had another keynote yesterday by Professor Monica Chivita, who informed us that we need to do research in teamwork. I am glad to host this panel this morning, a panel on digital natives and digital migrants. And I am also glad to inform you that the work which will be presented at this panel is work which has been done by teams. So I want to welcome all the panelists, and I want to start by introducing all the panelists so that we know who is who on this panel. I'll start with Dr. Sarah Namusoga. Dr. Sarah Namusoga is a lecturer in the Department of Journalism and Communication at Makerere University. She is also the e-learning coordinator for the School of Languages, Literature and Communication. She holds a PhD in Culture and Media Studies from the University of KwaZulu-Natal and a master's in Journalism and Media Studies from Rhodes University. She teaches print and multimedia journalism and communication courses at both undergraduate and graduate levels. She previously taught at the Uganda Christian University in the Faculty of Journalism, Media and Communication, and she has worked as an online sub-editor at New Vision, as well as Hansard editor at the Pan-African and Ugandan parliaments. She's remembered for the, because in 2012, she and a team of Uganda Parliament produced the award-winning publication, Parliament since 1962, Our Story. The book was part of the activities to mark Uganda's independence Golden Jubilee and records Parliament's history. Our second panelist is Dr. Fred Kakoza. Dr. Fred Kakoza is a lecturer in the Department of Journalism and Communication at Makerere University. He holds a PhD from the University of KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa. His research focused on social media and HIV/AIDS prevention among younger people in Uganda. And Dr. Kakoza has keen interest in broadcast journalism, multimedia journalism, and social media. He has been engaged on various projects on media and communication for development. Welcome, Dr. Sarah Namusoga, and welcome, Dr. Fred Kakoza. Our third panelist is Dr. Charlotte Kawesa Nturme. Dr. Charlotte Kawesa Nturme is a lecturer and a master's program coordinator at the Department of Journalism and Communication. She holds a PhD from the University of Oslo in Norway. Her research interests include media and conflict, peace journalism, crisis communication, media and peace building. Charlotte has previously served in various editorial roles at the Daily Monitor and the Observer newspapers at a time when the mainstream media operations were transitioning from analog to digital. She's keen on seeing a similar transition from the classroom and particularly in the university environment. Welcome, Dr. Charlotte Kawe-Santulme. Our fourth panelist is Dr. Marion Alina. Dr. Marion Olga Alina is a communications and multimedia professional with extensive experience in both academia and industry in the field of digital media, journalism, communication, and public relations. She holds a PhD in culture and media studies obtained from the University of KwaZulu-Natal. She has trained also in advancement and resource mobilization at Rhodes University in South Africa. Ms. Alina is currently an assistant lecturer at the Department of Journalism and Communication at Makerere University, and she has previously worked with the Public Relations Office at Makerere University. I must say that she previously worked at WBS TV as editor, senior news reporter, and producer as well. The final panelist is Mr. Richard Kajumbla. Mr. Richard Kajumbla is a lecturer in the Institute of Open, Distance, and E-Learning in the College of Education and External Studies. He's a blended and online learning trainer. He teaches and coordinates online learning. You are all welcome to this panel. I must say it's a very, very, very strong panel to discuss digital, or rather to discuss digital issues in line with learning, in line with the teaching, particularly at Makerere University. So I want us to start with the team of 4, which has done research about digital natives and digital migrants, exploring the place of multimedia tools in e-learning at Makerere University, specifically at the School of Languages, Literature, and Communication. I don't know who wants to go first from the team of 4, you, Fred, Sarah, Charlotte, and Marion, but I think Fred would want to go first. Fred, I invite you to make your submission in regard to the topic.
Thank you very much, Chair. And good morning, colleagues. It's nice to be here this morning. And we are here to share with you our findings, our initial findings on a study that we are undertaking, which we have titled Digital Natives and Digital Migrants. And we are exploring the place of multimedia tools in e-learning at Makerere University. And we are a team from the Department of Journalism and Communication. So we are pleased to be here. Just as a way of introduction, we need to say that this research came about out of our interest in what has been happening around the COVID-19 and the implementation of the standard operating procedures, which kind of resulted into lockdowns. So we understand that when the country was locked down, the lockdowns affected various sectors of the country, which included higher education. For instance, we remember that in 2020, the education institutions were closed on 18th March, and all our students had to go home because COVID-19 wouldn't allow contact person-to-person contact. So students had to go home. But because of the need to continue with learning activities, the National Council for Higher Education guided that learning can still continue without necessarily lecturers and students interacting physically. So this meant that the only available space would be the online space, would be the digital space. The digital space became very important to facilitate, learning and teaching. So what happened was that students and lecturers were now, for the first time, I should say, meeting in this digital space. And what is bringing them there is to facilitate learning. So these digital spaces meant that you needed to provide digitized resources which students would use, but also digitized resources which lecturers needed to use. And yes, so which lecturers also needed to use. So when it came to that, we realized that there was what we call technological dualism in terms of digital skill set, whereby we have digital natives, and we also have digital migrants sharing the same space. And so between the digital migrants and the natives, we want to understand that native comes from the word nativity, as explained in the English dictionary, which basically relates to the occasion of a person's birth. So by digital natives, we mean these people that have been born in the digital technological era, and they're able to go about, computers and digital devices with no hindrance. So it therefore means, as Alexander explains, that these people have a high proficiency with these technologies. And these natives in our research relate to our current students who have been, working with these technologies since early childhood. And this earns them the title of being digital natives. So because they have that urge and they have that, that basic understanding of digital devices, the programming and navigation, these spaces and what is happening in those spaces is easy for them to navigate. Yes. So that takes us to the migrants, what we termed as digital migrants. And here, a migrant basically is a person who moves from one place to another. And in this regard, we are looking at us as trainers, lecturers, moving from our physical teaching environment to the digital space, the online environment. But we also note that migrants move basically to search for better living conditions. And in the respect of the digital space and COVID-19, the living condition was in that space where we couldn't get, COVID-19 and things like that. So, but what happens to the migrants is that they are coming into this space at later stages in their lives. So basically they are joining this digital space, which already has natives. But what requires these migrants is that they now need to be able to use the technology, the digital technology, in the same way that the natives use this technology. And like one of the scholars says, this kind of creates a communication problem where the digital migrant cannot necessarily communicate well with the digital native. And for our purposes of what brings the migrant there as lecturers is basically the e-learning, as has been suggested by the National Council of Higher Education, that learning could only take place that side. So, and under under e-learning, we are looking at those set of technologies that can that can support the learning environment. It includes elements of, assessment. It includes elements of instruction. It also includes elements of tutoring. Yes. Now, so what our interest in the study is that because you have the natives and you have the migrants, it therefore created a big difference between those that were born during the technology era, and also those that are just coming to the technology, So basically, and we are saying that, sorry, the slides kind of, yes, so that's where we are. Apologies for that. So we are saying that the differences in this digital skill gives a different appreciation of how these multimedia skills can be used to facilitate teaching and learning between the digital native and the digital migrant. And what happens in this space is that you need to create materials, e-learning materials, which can be appreciated in this digital space. And this set of learning materials is what we call multimedia. Multimedia is that form of communication that combines different content forms such as text, audio, and animations and images. So it basically means that if you're going to have these multimedia elements to teach, you need to have tools that will help you to create this content. And therefore, it means that there is a sort of transformation between the teaching staff and the students. And that sort of transformation in trying to access content and creating content kind of creates an impact on their learning and teaching activities. This is why we came in to understand how the School of Languages, Literature and Communication has navigated and has interacted and has created this content to see how the continuity of learning is done. From that perspective, because we sought to understand how the digital technologies are being used, we looked at the affordances theory as a framework in which we can really understand how these digital technologies are integrated into everyday practices, and in our case, which is the teaching and learning, and the resultant patterns. But this affordances theory basically talks about the value of an object within its environment, how people within that environment interact with a given object, say technology, to make the good out of it. And specifically for this research, we are looking at technological affordancy, and we are looking at how this technology, its properties, and the perception of users can, allow the progression of learning. Yes. So basically, we set out to understand the role that multimedia tools have played for continuity of teaching and learning during the COVID-19 pandemic. We also set out to explore the experience of lecturers and students in using these multimedia tools. And our main question was, how are departments, and especially lecturers and students in the School of Languages, Literature and Communication, how are they using these tools in teaching and learning? Yes, so our specific questions were: what role have digital media tools played in enabling teaching and learning during the COVID-19 pandemic? What has been the experience in using these multimedia tools for teaching and learning? What challenges, if there is, or opportunities are faced by lecturers and students when using these multimedia tools? The methodology took on a mixed methods outlook, but we used the online survey as a data collection tool for students, and we also used the question guide, the interview guide, as a data collection tool for in-depth interviews. So under the online survey, we used the Google Forms because we appreciated that these are digital natives, so they should be able to do that. And we also use Zoom and telephones for interviews of lecturers. We have so far received 16 responses from the survey, and we have so far done 4 interviews across the 5 departments of the School of Languages, Literature, and Communication. And our focus really targeted graduate students and lecturers. Yes, so based on that background and the methods that we used to collect data and in appreciation of our research question, I'm going to ask my colleague, Dr. Sarah Namusoga, to take us through the findings. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Fred. Sarah, please briefly tell us the key findings from this research.
Okay, thank you very much, Fred, for taking us through the preliminaries. Our findings will be presented in 3 parts: the role of multimedia tools in teaching and learning, the experiences of lecturers and students in using multimedia tools, and the challenges faced by lecturers and students when using multimedia tools. I'll specifically handle the first part, which talks about the role of multimedia tools in teaching and learning. So we found that there were 3 major roles that the lecturers attributed to multimedia tools in teaching. The first was that it enabled teaching to take place in the first place outside of a physical lecture room. The other was that it saves time, and the other was that it enhanced teaching and creativity skills. So as one lecturer was quoted saying, I might say that really digital communication has revolutionized learning, because when students were sent home during the lockdown due to COVID-19, we were almost stuck, and we knew that we would not continue interacting with our students. But this digital communication really helped learning to continue. So you can see that it's allowed learning to continue, but also to take place in the first place, given that now there was no physical contact, as Fred has explained. So the other one was that multimedia content and these tools helped to save time. And here, lecturers were quoted as saying that we post the materials online, the students get them from wherever they are, you do not have to move. The students are able to study on their own without having them having to wait in a classroom. So we see a bit of saving time here, but also a bit of convenience, which is key, especially to the digital natives who like to do things at their own convenience. And so it's this particular time was good for many of them, as the lecturers are saying, because it was convenient, you know. And one other lecturer said you can just schedule something and the students can tell you whether they will be online or not, which is a very good thing, as opposed to you turning up in class and students don't turn up, you know. Out of 50, you have maybe 1 or 2 students, and later on they'll give all these kinds of excuses. But with digital technology, with multimedia tools, they're able to study at their convenience and to let you know when they'll be online or not. So the third element was that it enhanced teaching and creativity skills. Here we see that lecturers needed to really get out of their comfort zones and stand up to the occasion. As we see, one person said, but also they have given us the chance to realize our abilities, but also our creativity in the way we teach, which is away from physical teaching, okay? but also to help us to understand that in times like these, where there's a lot of disruption, we can still move on as if life is normal and find creative ways of dealing with abnormality within new and normal spaces. So we can see that even though this was a disruption, to some lecturers, it turned out to be a positive thing because it brought out the best in them. It showed them that they could actually be something that they hadn't thought they would be. They became more creative and they got out of their comfort zone to ensure that teaching took place. So in other words, we could say that so far, these multimedia tools have played a positive role in teaching at the school. They have helped to save time while at the same time enabled teaching to take place in the midst of the COVID-19 disruption. So we'll now quickly look at the role that these tools have played in learning. And here we got this from the students. One of them was that these tools enabled access to course materials. And here students cited Muwele, where they were able to access course outlines and reading materials for various topics in their courses. They were also able to submit assignments, again, via Muwele, but also, like the lecturer said, these tools enabled continuity of lectures using Google Meets especially. As one student said, continuity of lectures, which helps to utilize time that would have been lost because of the lockdown. So again, we can see here saving time, but we also see convenience. So they were also able to make presentations for class assignments and discussions, which they would have done in a physical setting, but now they were also able to do that online. The other one was that students were able to interact with each other using especially social media tools. As one student said, social media tools have aided fully fledged discussions with classmates, especially with the audio notes tool and other multimedia share capabilities. So that also allowed them to kind of enjoy the affordances of being in a physical setting without necessarily being in a physical setting. It also enhanced digital research, so they said, but as we can see again, saving time comes up here because they were able to attend class remotely. This saves on time of moving from workplaces to the university to attend class physically. It is very convenient for graduate students. So we see that again, saving time and convenience keeps coming up, and this is key to natives because, as we've already pointed out, convenience is important to them at the risk of stereotyping, but that's what the literature says. So in other words, multimedia tools have again played a positive role in learning. They've enabled student-lecturer interaction, saved time, and facilitated submission of coursework. So I would say that both lecturers and students found multimedia tools to have played a positive role. They've both indicated that having to navigate the multimedia environment pushed them to appreciate multimedia tools better and to adjust to using them. And so we would say that at this point, in terms of what role multimedia tools have played in teaching and learning, there's not been much difference as both lecturers and students have appreciated, adopted, and taken up multimedia tools. So at this point, I would like to hand over to my colleague, Charlotte, to take us to the next point. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah. Good morning, participants. Thank you for coming. I will just take over from Sarah, as she has said. So Sarah has just summarized the benefits and the challenges. And I would like to take it up with a discussion or some sharing of the experiences that lecturers and students faced in using multimedia tools. Now, here we are really looking at the experience of the user in that multimedia and digital space. And this has to do with nuance, where there's a lot that is involved, including issues of access, including someone's previous experience using these tools, but also their context, their social context, as we shall see. So these experiences are multi-pronged, and as one participant who was a lecturer said, they are double-edged. In other words, they were both positive experiences and negative experiences. Fred took us through the methods we used briefly. And I would just like to say that these are just a few of those that are still coming up. We are still receiving responses. So this is an ongoing exercise and we shall enrich it. But so far, these are the experiences that have been shared. Basically, users said, that's lecturers and students said, this was a new experience and it was eye-opening. It was empowering, it was exciting, and it was an opportunity to realize their abilities. Yes, I've said already that it's an enriching and a learning experience. It's challenging. It built resilience, including, rather, in spite of the challenges that Sarah has taken us through. It also built resilience among users, and for students, we also saw that it built a lot of teamwork. So there was that experience of using teamwork. So I'll just look at some of those in a bit more detail. And here we are really looking at what some of the participants shared in trying to show these different experiences. So we basically looked at these interviews and the survey, and then we picked up some emerging themes in terms of experience. So someone who, one of those who said that this was a new experience, an eye-opening, shared that my experience was that it was not easy. I had never used this approach. I had never used multimedia to teach, so it was a new experience. But later that person said, I started enjoying it, and my students who were ready and who had the facilities, who had phones, smartphones, were really into it. Initially, it was abstract and it was not easy at the beginning, but we learned how to cope with it. So you can see that this was a sort of a transitioning experience, you know, from facing the hardships at first and the challenges, but then later on beginning to cope and adapting to the tools and the technologies. It was empowering, exciting, and an opportunity to realize abilities. Again, we have some quotes. I might not read all of them in the interest of time, but just the ones that we highlighted, you know, they have given us the chance to realize our abilities and our creativity in the way we teach, okay? And another one said it was also, what it also did was to help me rethink the way I teach. So again, you know, those are some of the experiences. Rethinking, you know, getting out of that previous mold, you know, mold of teaching physically. And now people are starting to rethink, and that it opened new ideas and new ways of thinking. It was enriching. So someone shared, sometimes I found the tools or the materials really, really deep and rich. I was actually also being taught on the job. So we found that a number of lecturers shared that, the ones that we talked to shared that while they were sharing what they know, they also found that increasingly as they used these tools and materials, they also managed to learn a lot more than they had known. This one said, there were those videos that challenged what I knew, you see, challenging what you know. And later on, again, saying that they would make him or make her rethink certain ideas that I had over the years from teaching. It was really not just about information, it was also about what new things were emerging. So that was an experience that, you know, this was enriching and empowering, and that users were able to learn, including the lecturers were able to learn something. But like we've said, that these were multi-pronged or two-pronged experiences. There were those that increasingly found the experience horrific, exhausting, and frustrating. And this one says that, I would say it was horrific because you find this new space that you have not used before. And sometimes you do not know how to deal with it. You don't know how your students are going to deal with it. And then this one was also interesting. This lecturer said, I remember one of my students sent me a message and said that the students are saying they are tired of Mwele, they are tired of online technologies and all that. And I said, you know, they can decide to drop out of the course, because I did not know what to say to him. But that also shows us that, you know, lecturers also did not know how, okay, not did not know, but it was a challenging experience also trying to, you know, to guide students to adapt to these new technologies, because literally everyone was trying to sort of, you know, survive from drowning. Okay, not everyone, of course, but and again, this also shows us, because now it has kind of it's sort of an inverted experience, where you'd have expected perhaps that students would be more ready to use these tools than the lecturers. In this case, it's the students who are complaining that they are tired, they are frustrated, they are tired of these online technologies. So, this other lecturer said it was a double-edged sword. That it has been a double-edged sword for me. It has its own interesting advantages that I really love. You can teach from wherever you are. You don't have to fight with traffic jam. You don't have to expose yourself to a lot of issues, just like Sarah really took us through the advantages or the benefits. However, on the other side of the coin, there's also a lot to learn. In spite of the benefits, there's a lot to learn. We are used to the traditional way of doing things. So you prepare to go to class, you teach and disappear. But now you need to put in a lot more time. So
where use 2 more minutes.
Okay, I'll do that. So where you found that, let's say, you know, lecturers might be used to just carrying their files, and, you know, what perhaps they taught in the last semester is what they might teach in the next one. With these tools, you had to keep updating, you know, updating your material, updating your examples, finding relevant materials, and that sort of thing. I'm winding up, Chair. So now we also tried to summarize some of the experiences of the students that were shared in the surveys, as Fred told us. And students generally recognize the potential of multimedia tools and expressed a willingness to experiment with this new future. Many of them said, this is the future. So some of the feelings were that Mwele is sometimes really slow, otherwise it's been good. Connectivity issues were a challenge. There was no data sometimes to complete class exercises or even the lectures. There's poor network connection that affects concentration levels, and therefore the need for learners' attendance to follow properly. So those were some of the challenges in summary that the students experienced. But then they also looked forward to a future and said the tools made learning flawless, although it was data intensive. They said it's been a best learning experience, and besides the challenge of internet, it's been flexible, convenient, time-saving, which really sort of takes us back to the benefits, and so on and so forth. But the last ones are just what I wanted to say, that first it was challenging, but I see that it's the way to go. And then another one said it's quick and remotely aggressive, but it's the new future. And the last slide here just shows us that as this experience show us, there's need perhaps for a paradigm shift, you know, from the way of thinking, that kind of experiences we've been used to. We need to have a paradigm shift, and we also need more investment from what students and lecturers shared. We need more investment in these tools and in the internet and data that really fuels them. So our policies are not quick enough to respond to the needs of digital learning. In terms of policy, we are still thinking very analog. And we need to invest a lot when it comes to the internet, so that at least when you share your videos, students can easily access them. I just wanted to also say that there is a lecturer that shared that many of the students from maybe not really poor, well, he said it does not help students from poor families, but those who could not access maybe the internet, or those who didn't have smart gadgets, they tended to gather, you know, in perhaps the trading center where they could access internet, or to someone's home and they would learn in groups. So that also brought about that teamwork that we talked about. And we just also want to say that the experiences showed that both migrants or immigrants and natives had almost the same challenges, almost the same experiences. So there was no sort of clear-cut divide between the experiences of the what are so-called or what are expected to be the immigrants and the natives. Thank you very much. And I would like to hand over to my colleague, Dr. Marion Alina. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Charlotte.
Thank you, Charlotte. It's a pleasure to join the panel this morning, and my colleagues have really given it a very good start. So really to kind of seamlessly flow into what they've presented, we are talking about the challenges, therefore, that the different lecturers faced in trying to apply multimedia tools. One, we all know that some classes in Makerere University have a very big number of students. So we had a colleague who shared that, well, she had about 300 plus students for one class, and another class has another 200 plus. So you're trying to teach them and they are so distracted. Their mind is divided between so many competing platforms, such as WhatsApp, which they actually preferred. So the university is trying to push for Muele, but students prefer WhatsApp, and then you have 300 of them, and then you can't really monitor them. Others forget their microphones on, and then they are speaking different things. Others are into videos. A lot of that disruption is happening, and the lecturers found it quite a challenge. And then my colleague hinted on the absence of a clear university policy. Indeed, this is the case. There is no clear university policy and support system for online engagement. One semester we are told, okay, we are going Muele. It's e-learning throughout. Then there's a pause, and then both are encouraged. So we are not really sure whether the university policy as of now is for us to embrace e-learning throughout, but that in itself was a bit of a challenge to the lecturers, where the students would come to them and actually challenge them on the absence of something that is as strong as a policy guideline on that issue. And then, yes, we've all been battling, many of us, with the unfamiliarity on how to maximize the Muele platform, which is the Makerere University e-learning environment platform that that the university is pushing for, or as a Moodle platform. But then I recall one of the recent engagements where a member of staff submitted that, look, you cannot train all of us on this platform at a go. Split it up. Allow the faster learners to go, allow the slower learners to also have their session. So that unfamiliarity at a point when the system is being rolled out to students was a big challenge to the lecturers. Then you have the slow learners themselves on the side of students. So you have lecturers who have been fast enough to grasp these things. So they go ahead and produce material, spend a lot of time to produce this material, but then again, when they give it to students, they again have to explain the process of producing the material so that the students also get to produce it. That became a challenge, and in a way, a point of frustration for some of the lecturers. Sorry. The other point of frustration for the lecturers was that they did not have access, rather support in a way. Excuse me a bit. All right. Sorry, my slide jumped a bit there. So yes, just to conclude on the lecturers, one of the other frustrations they talked about was that they were not supported by the university in terms of giving them necessary gadgets. So they had to use a lot of their gadgets and their internet and their data, and it was a bit frustrating. But then when you get to students, they also complain of a similar thing. They say, look, we had limited access as well to the internet and other resources, especially when we are off campus. We all know of recent that there's been a revision or hints of a revision to the cost of data. So this affected those, first of all, who were able to buy data, but somehow along the way it runs out. So their concentration levels are affected. And then those who totally had no access. Okay. And my colleague has also hinted on, one of the lecturers told us what he found out was that when he gave assignments, students will sit in groups of 15 or more to listen to that audio and then do the assignment. It is that kind of limited environment we are working in that was also a problem. Some lecturers, now the students began to speak, that some lecturers were not well versed, and the students would see this. How? That the lecturers tended to use one tool, and that was audio. So to the students, it came off like a phone conversation. You say you're going e-learning, you say you're going to use multimedia skills, and they get excited. And then every other time you send them something, it's audio and audio. So they start thinking, am I on a phone conversation? And this kind of affected their desire or their excitement about the classes and the whole multimedia tool usage for lectures. Then on the part of the lecturers, we noticed limited enthusiasm. And why is this? We've hinted on one who said, I did not get facilitation from the department. So I was using personal data, a personal phone. So basically everything was on me. That killed his enthusiasm for pushing for online classes as a lecturer. So what are we saying? Basically, as we come to our conclusion today, I want to quote something from Alexander Field, written in 2012, where he says, uptake of digital technologies, that is not tied to generational gaps. It isn't. It is tied to our socioeconomic status, race, ethnicity, and access to broadband and smartphones. So as a university, we can actually change. We can choose to go the whole length of what it means to be a university that is in line with the demands of this century, that is going online purely, or at least very effective in using e-platforms, a university that has clarity on policy, a university that continues to train its staff so that at one point, the digital natives and the digital migrants can have a seamless conversation, because like we've said, this is not tied to anything like a generational group. So we need to break that generational group, move in and be the top university that we pride ourselves in being. I want to call my colleague, Dr. Fred Kakoza, to take us through the conclusion. Over to you, Fred. Pleasure. Yes, and thank you everyone for joining us.
Okay. Fred, please use 2 minutes for the conclusion. Thank you so much, Marion.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Alina, for that wonderful conclusion. As we have discussed, the point is that online learning is with us, and we need to see how we cover this gap between the natives and the migrants. So we have an appreciation that actually technology can be used to support learning and in collaborative ways. One of the lecturers actually hinted that when she talked to students that they would be doing products for Instagram and Telegram, students were very, very excited to partake of that. And this points to a reality that actually these technologies can be used by students to negotiate, shared meanings, but also work as teams in a collaborative way to achieve a common goal. We also need to have an appreciation that actually e-learning evolves. There will always be new tools, new multimedia tools that will come across, and we need to have a quick level of adoption to some of these tools. Marion has just hinted on the policies, but we are also saying that the resources have to be available and sufficient to be able to extend this learning beyond the classroom to the context of where students can be. And we note that students are on the move, like it is under Choose, that Choose is on the move. So we also note that students are on the move And some of these, applications should be done to achieve that. Like, for example, if we have a Mwele app, students shouldn't be struggling with the website to access that. The other opportunity that such a digital environment brings are really research opportunities that, as a research-led university, and we are transforming into the same, we have more avenues where we can really anchor our research. We have avenues to look into digital safety. How are these learners and also the facilitators, how do they perceive the dangers in this digital learning environment? And how are they really prepared? We need to also look at their digital life skills. It's not all about getting online or accessing content online, but we need to see how are they prepared? How do they navigate their online life and environment to be able to achieve the common goal that we want to achieve of teaching and learning. That's our conclusion for now, dear Chair. We could move on to understand how these findings really fit into the big university research that was carried out by our colleagues, represented by Richard.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kakoza. Thank you, the journalism team. Dr. Namusoga, Dr. Alina, Dr. Antulume, and Dr.
Ivan, we don't hear
for
you.
that wonderful presentation. I want to remind our audience that we are live on Facebook. We are also live on Twitter, and we are live on YouTube. Please join the discussion. I also want to invite you to post your views in the chat. At the right time, I'll read them. The last reminder is that we shall be having an evaluation form sent to you in the evening. Please don't forget to fill that form. So now let's move to the next item, where I'm inviting Mr. Richard Kajumbra to tell us in about 10 to 12 minutes a research or an evaluation they have done as School of Education in regard to online learning. Mr. Kajumbra, you are very, very, very welcome. Please share your screen and tell us the key issues in your research so that I can be able to open the discussion for our audience to express themselves. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Chair. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, my fellow panelists. I thank you so much for the opportunity to present during this conference. And I thank the panelists who have just presented the findings from a study that they carried out. In fact, this one that I'm going to present will more or less validate the findings of the one that they just carried out. I'm going to present findings on an evaluation of the implementation of the emergency open distance and e-learning system at Makerere University during the COVID-19 pandemic. And this report was compiled by two teams, the e-learning implementation fast tracking task force and the Institute of Open Distance and E-Learning, Makerere University. So these findings were compiled by those two, what I would call parties. By way of background, the events that followed the outbreak of COVID-19, 20th March, the university was closed just like other educational institutions. Then on 5th October, so between 20th March and 5th October, there was largely no business. Then 5th October, learning resumed through emergency open distance and e-learning. 15th October, the final year students reported to the university to complete their studies through blended emergency order. So they came in, but they had limited face-to-face and largely studying online, just like my fellow panelists have been showing. Now, during this period, from the time the university closed 20th March up to the time finance report, between there, all faculty had to shift to blended teaching approach, because then that's a space, like one of our colleagues has said, it was now the alternative. And then November and December 2020, we had on-campus exams. So we had the closure, then the opening, and then exams. So the distance between reporting and exams was a very short period, about 2 weeks. So what was happening during that time? Now, for this study, Makerere University was massively moving into ODEL, open distance and e-learning, for the first time. Previously, ODEL was in a unit, and we had distance learning students. There were quite a few, but the situation came when the entire university had to go distance. So we need to take stock of what happened after that period, and also try to see if there is a way forward. So this study basically was intended to establish the teaching and learning practices during the emergency model implementation occasioned by COVID-19, the COVID-19 pandemic, so as to inform further implementation of professional model at MAC. So teaching and learning practices, what did the lecturers do during that period? Okay. And how was it done? The methodology, the study, mixed methods design, the survey of all academic staff. There was also inspection of courses developed on Mwele, Makerere University e-learning environment, which my colleague has talked about. This word Mwele is now not new. And we collected data using Google Forms posted on the academic staff mailing list. But to counter low response rate for the online survey, hard copy questionnaires were printed and issued to all the 10 colleges, and 467 lecturers responded. So that's how the study was done. So what did we find? The capacity of faculty for emergency. Some of them had prior training, some of them had never had. So there's some figures here. There are those who had never had prior training, okay? There are those who had ever taught using ODEL approaches. There are those who had ever developed a course. So there was some limited capacity. Some of them had used print-based distance courses. So there was some limited capacity of using distance learning material. Now, distance learning is not only e-learning, but when you're facilitating learners and you're separated from the learners, then there's that distance. So there are approaches that are used. And so lecturers had some capacity. And what were they using during that period? There are those used email. So they would email learners. Those used Zoom. There are those used Mwele, okay? And then other methods, the Google Meet, Google Classroom. But you can see that emails were used the most, then Zoom. And then the learning environment, Mwele, which my colleagues have talked about largely. Then, sorry for the font size here, but what kind of support was given to learners? There are those who gave them soft copy handouts via email, then Zoom-based lectures, being flexible, coursework handing. So the deadlines had to be extended. That's supporting. They gave them study materials uploaded on Mwele, the one that my colleagues have been talking about. Then there are those who gave course information in the first week of teaching. Then those who gave printed or hard copy handouts. Those who would print, because maybe some learners would not access the technologies. So what we do, you print out some handouts and provide, okay? Then engaging activities in the course, plus many other approaches that were used to support learners. I'll just not read each of them here. Okay, then inclusivity. What approaches were used to ensure that even those maybe who could not access internet, maybe those who prefer to use other methods, there were materials in different formats. That's maybe what my colleagues have talked about, multimedia or mixed, we call them mixed media, print, visual, audio, then identifying leaders of learners' disabilities, and then training faculty in inclusivity, then social media was also used to try and reach out. So allowing other methods, because not everyone would learn using Mwele. So we had to come in to use other methods to ensure inclusivity. Okay. So how did the lecturers access technology to support learners? Some of them were at home, others in the offices. So you can say those ones at home and offices almost were the same number. Then anywhere they found the space and internet connectivity, because lecturers were spread across the country, and some of them where the lockdown got them in places where there was no connectivity. So they had to find places where there's connectivity, and others would go to internet cafes to support. That's what they were saying. Okay. Then courses developed during that period. What's the status of those courses? Like you can see, we have different colleges here, and we have fully developed courses, developed, partially developed, not developed, empty. So we went to the learning management system and looked at what we call course shells, the course spaces, and realized that during that time, many units endeavored to develop courses, at least up to the extent of partially developed. Okay, then we have those that for whom we created spaces, but the courses are not yet developed. And we have so many courses in the university, as you can see, that 7,518 courses that are yet, that are in the university. Some of them are fully developed, some of them are yet to be developed, others are just partially developed. But all this effort, there was that astronomical surge in development of online and e-learning courses on the learning management system during that period. So we had many people, in fact, although we said this effort needed to have these others also developed. So what do we conclude from that study? That blended learning is increasingly being implemented at Macquarie University. Okay, at that time it was in a small unit, but now it is largely being adopted. Then some aspects of teaching and learning took place online, while others took place in physical presence of learners. Okay, practical aspects in different courses in the university were taught in the physical spaces at campus, because there are courses that cannot run online per se. Maybe for some reason, the medicals, for example, had to come. Vet, they have some components. Technology have some components. Chemistry. So those components that are practical had to be shelved to be covered in physically when the learners are around. Of course, they could be done away from campus, but learners may not afford the environment, the controlled environment of experiments, and then the resources or apparatus needed to carry out experiments outside the university, or the samples needed. So those ones have to be shelved, that learners do practicals as and when they report. Then, of course, alternative assessment methods are also possible given access to technology. During that period, we appreciated the fact that now, when I say we, all of us lecturers in the university, I've come to appreciate that there are alternative assessment methods, that it's not a timed exam all the time, 24/7, but we have alternatives. We can assess learners as they learn, and we can grade them during the process of learning. We have come to learn that learning takes place from that time a learner enters your course the first time, whether online or physical, up to the end. But the traditional system has rewarded the final exam more than the learning process. So in other words, a learner may not attend all classes, but then they read in the last week and then pass a whole course. And we're saying that under this new dispensation, because you give tasks online, we are working together with the university to see that we can now grade the learning process, so that you can observe as a learner in these tasks as they do activities, and then a certain portion of the mark can be the final exam. So that we no longer have learners who just come into the exam and pass it highly when they never attended any classes, never did any activities. So we have those alternative assessment methods that are coming in, the open book, open world exams, the authentic assessment, all those. Now we're realizing that they are possible. Okay. What are some of the recommendations? More capacity building for staff. This has been talked about by my other panelists for staff and students, and this started already during the COVID time, and students are being trained even now. We're in the training process of learners, because we realize that many learners have actually phones. Many learners have these mobile phones. Some of them most of them can access the technology, but they don't know how to use the system that we use, the learning management system. And so the training was very, very important. Then more investment in infrastructure is needed. I am aware that this week or last week, the university bought another server to strengthen Mwele. During the COVID time, another server was bought, and even 2 new servers are going to be bought. So that's investment in infrastructure, and the university is doing that. Then policy reforms, especially e-assessment. How are we assessing learners who are at home? And what does the policy say? You may want to assess learners online, but the policy does not allow. So some policy reforms. Okay, then access devices for students and staff. Like we have now what to call laptop banks in the university where lecturers can now borrow. If you want, borrow laptops. So we are building laptop banks in the university. We now meaning the university. Okay. Then internet subsidy for education. Yes, we're now the university has entered into an agreement with the service providers to have 0 rating, so that when you are using Market University platforms for learning, like the Mwele platform, you are not charged any data. So that agreement was entered into and is now in implementation stages. Then reorienting budgeting, so there's more financing for blended learning and e-learning, or open distance and e-learning. Then change management strategies. Because, you know, when COVID-19 came in, we went to the deep end of ordeal. And so changing, adapting to this new method, there's some bit of resistance, because maybe some for fear, maybe others maybe others don't know what to do in this new dispensation. Maybe others just don't know how to adapt. They want to join e-learning, but don't know how to join. So change management strategies are also needed, so that we all transition now into this new dispensation. So I thank you so much for listening to me. I hand over back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, thank you so much, Richard, for using your time so well. Thank you for that very, very, very important presentation. It's really very eye-opening, especially for those of us who didn't know what the university was doing to ensure that that as many students as possible can access Mwele and can access internet, and therefore be able to learn online. So I am now opening the floor. We have about 10 minutes to discuss this topic, and I'll be asking some questions as I welcome more and more questions. I will ask a question to Dr. Sarah Namusoga, and any member of the team would be free to answer the question. From the presentation, you have indicated that e-learning comes with convenience, and it therefore enhances learning, but we are also facing resistance. So how can we bring on board those who are resisting e-learning? I'll ask the other questions to Mr. Kajumbra, and the question I'm asking came from Miss Jane Francis Allo. She says, and then she asks, I agree, the digital divide is not the classical generational one between the younger natives and the older migrants, but it's a result of other economic, infrastructure, racial, and other factors. What prospects, therefore, do you see for Makele's realistic use of the digital learning? Richard, what prospects, therefore, do you see for Makele's realistic use of digital learning platforms? I go to the next question. These questions are coming from Professor Edward Wamala. Professor Edward Wamala is asking, what practical steps can be taken to make data more affordable? That's question one. Question two, are there attempts anywhere to get government match its policy wishes on online teaching and learning with its economic imperative to expand the tax base? The last question can be answered by anyone on the panel. And the question I'm talking about is a question which Dr. Amala asks, Are there attempts anywhere to get government to match its policy wishes on online teaching and learning with its economic imperative to expand the tax base? The last question is coming from Dr. Florence Namasinga. Dr. Florence Namasinga is asking, what are the implications of your findings for digital literacy at the university? I'll ask, well, Florence has not indicated who should answer this question, but anyone on the panel can answer the question. Maybe I can ask either Dr. Kakoza, if you can answer this question, or she has asked the DGC team. What are the implications of your findings for digital literacy at the university? Okay, let me invite Dr. Namusoga to answer the first question on how we can overcome resistance to online teaching and learning.
Thank you very much, Ivan. There are a number of things that we can actually do to bring on board those who are resisting e-learning. And some of the things that we are going to talk about cover many of the questions that have also been asked. One of the most important things for us to do as a university is to undertake a baseline survey for all the students. Yes, to undertake a baseline survey for all the students to find out who stands where. It's only after we've received that information, that data, that we'll be able to make informed decisions that will move the situation forward. As it is now, it's not clear where our students stand in terms of access, in terms of digital literacy even. So we need to send out questions. We need to send out a survey to find out who our students are in terms of this whole digital talk. And that's important. And that also addresses Dr. Namasinga's question on digital literacy. So right now, unless there's research that has been done, we can't tell, but the implications are that we need to carry out a survey to establish the position of everyone's stand at this point. And then you talked about prospects. Richard, I'll answer a bit of this, but you also come in where necessary. We thought that in addition to undertaking a university-wide survey among our students, as Richard pointed out, we need to get students zero-rated access to our platforms. That includes subsidies to internet bundles and things like that, in addition to training of lecturers and students as well. It's already training for lecturers and students is taking place, which is a good thing. And so we hope that it continues, and at the end of the day that everyone will be on the same page. But we could also continue integrating other learning platforms into Muwele. Right now, we already have the big blue button, which is a huge step in as far as conducting synchronous learning is concerned. So we can use the big blue button to carry out our lectures live online, but we should also incorporate others that other people might be comfortable with. Some people are more comfortable with Zoom, others with Google Meets. And so we need to have that conversation to know whether going one way is the way to go, or we should have all these things integrated. Yeah, so I'll leave the rest to Richard to talk about the policy and
Richard, please talk about the other questions, including where, I am very excited about this, including where we can borrow laptop bags from.
I've missed the last words that you've spoken.
Including where we can borrow laptop bags from.
All okay. Okay. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, now the three main questions that have been asked. There is the prospects for MAC, for Makerere University, for the realistic use of digital learning platforms. Yeah, like Dr. Namusoga said, yes, we need to carry out that kind of survey or baseline survey to establish exactly what learners have and what they can afford. But still, we have pointers. The Quality Assurance Unit carried out a survey among learners and discovered that more than 80% had at least a smartphone. In Makerere University, at least about more than 75% of the learners have at least a smartphone. And so when we blend technology, because you can blend technologies. When we talk about using Mwele, the e-learning platform, but we can also use mobile learning. And mobile learning, not only for the smartphone, but even mobile learning on the other basic phone. Okay. Then we can also blend generation approaches. That there is first generation distance learning, and then there's up to fifth generation and virtual reality where we are right now. But we can blend so that we have a variety of approaches. Because if we say we shall not use technology, that means that maybe learning may also not take place until the COVID-19 situation is over. But we don't know what's coming. We don't know whether we have a third wave, we don't know whether the university will close again. We're not sure of anything. So we better prepare for that time when we maybe have this as the only option and eventually to become the best option, even if the university is open. Then about data affordability, yes, Dr. Namusoga again has spoken about it. I talked about zero rating and RENU. RENU is, I don't know, RENU in full, it's not in my mind right now. I can't put it easily, but RENU is one of those, it's a government organization that is in education networking, networking for education and technologies. And they have already done this zero rating. I know that they're doing it for secondary school teachers and they are zero rated. The big blue button has been incorporated inside the Moodle platform, and it's also zero rated. That time I was with some teachers, secondary school teachers. They have registered their telephone numbers. They can now enter into the teachers platform under RENU without being charged. And Makerere University, that time also, I remember I received a message that we should send in our telephone numbers so that they are zero rated. So the zero rating is really going to take shape. And also government approaches. I know that there's a national digital agenda. There is where my colleague, Professor Paul Mwindabirevu sits. They're also coming up with a national strategy for this. And I know that the government has prioritized distance learning. You know, the government also caught unawares in this whole thing. That's why some of the things are not yet as good as they should be because of the need to have rushed into doing them because of the COVID-19. But I know that government is also prioritizing because they also know that schools are closed, but learning has to continue. Now, about the banks, DICTS can advise on where, because I know that the university has received some laptops, and I think they are in DICTS somewhere, and they will be distributed to different colleges. So principals' offices are the ones going to be managing the laptop banks. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Richard. We are coming to the end of our discussion and time they will be shutting us down. But I want to thank our panelists, Dr. Frederica Koza, Dr. Marion Alina, Dr. Charlotte Kawesa, Tulme, Dr. Sarah Namusoga, and Mr. Richard Kajumbra for the wonderful presentations and for answering our questions. On behalf of the organizing committee of the National Humanities Conference 2021, I'd like to thank you all for joining us for this session and to encourage you to access whatever we have been discussing on this in this session on YouTube, on Twitter at Makerere, and on any other platform where you may find this content. It has been a very, very interesting subject, and I would like to invite you to join other sessions where discussions on humanities are ongoing. Please don't forget to fill the evaluation form, which will be sent to your emails in the evening. So from me and the rest of the organizing team, thank you. Please join other platforms.